My wife and I were married for 16 years. At the time of this story, we had 2 children, ages 8 and 11. Our eldest would occasionally watch videos on Mom's smartphone with our youngest watching beside him. I guess we were a pretty average family. I worked full-time while my wife worked part-time and oversaw the house in child-rearing. I would help, of course, but our children saw their mother more than me over time. Our relationship became emotionally distant. It was tiring enough keeping up our daily charade. Despite this, I thought my wife was happy. I went to bed, thankful each night for my family, shelter and security. My wife and I were proud of the savings we built for our children's future. I joked with her often saying we were living the American dream, a dream without emotional connection or spontaneity. It was January, so it was cold and we were digesting the huge financial bite we took to give our kids a great Christmas. I was already planning our summer getaway. The kids were going to a summer camp while the missus and I were going to Las Vegas. I told myself I didn't care what happened in Vegas. As long as my wife and I connected emotionally and physically from January to May. I tried talking to my wife. We went on bike rides as a family and it really was therapeutic. It became something we did every day. But when it came to talking, my wife didn't have much to say to me. She did, however, have a lot to say to a complete stranger while she cooked dinner. I sat on the couch with our kids as they watched a video on her phone. I saw a notification pop up from Able. It was on an app I never heard of. And the message said something like, "You never know what the future holds." My son swiped the notification away, but I took the phone from him, telling him to play hide and seek with his sister while my wife cooked and my kids entertained themselves. I frantically looked through the phone. I found several notifications leading to the messages between my wife and Able. They were part of some kind of support group, but I wasn't sure what, for their messages never turned sexual, but it was certainly heartwarming. My wife said she wished he lived closer to her so they could meet up in earlier messages. She explained she was struggling to maintain motivation for her marriage and went on to complain about me. The only things to really complain about were how much I worked and that I always said the same things. She didn't feel like she had anything new to say either, which made her feel like our relationship had nothing to offer us anymore. In response to that, AP scooped in. He said he could always be in her life to bring her solace and hope for the future. He said now that they met, he wanted to be whatever she needed him to be in her life. He never had children but said he always wanted to be a supportive father figure. I was extremely uncomfortable. This man was close to my wife and far too willing to step in. If she called on him, I took screenshots of everything and returned her phone saying it was in between the couch cushions. I could tell she was nervous that I even had her phone. I didn't want my wife to be talking with this guy, but I also didn't know what to say. It felt like anything I took the time to say would be wasted breath because I was still me. I didn't think I could make her see me for who I was, her lover, best friend and father to her children. It was up to her to see me for who I was. But she'd forgotten what made her fall in love with me in the first place. I returned home from work the next day to find my wife super nervous and jittery. She got defensive with me after the first question I asked her. Annoyed, I decided to go for a run alone. I only managed to walk to the end of our street before I heard something and turned around. It was a man leaving my house in a hurry, holding his shoes and belt. I ran over to him just as he closed the door and started the car. I laid on the hood to stop him from leaving. He rolled down his window a little with his heart visibly pounding his chest, asking me what I was doing. I asked if he was a ball. He just looked extremely fearful. I asked what he was doing with my wife and he just started begging me not to fight him. I told him I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to know the truth. It was a bull here to see my wife but only has a supportive friend. I asked him why then was he holding his belt and shoes? He hesitated and his chest started heaving again. I told him I'd give him something to fear if he didn't tell me what I wanted to know with that. He admitted to having sex with her, but only because she wanted him to, and he promised never to see her again. I got off the hood, as he said. He didn't realize what he was getting himself into. He swore one more time never to speak to her again before speeding off. My wife was standing on the porch speechless. She watched me walk towards her with my head hanging down. I told her I was divorcing her and she needed to pack her stuff. She started freaking out, hyperventilating, asking me about the kids and what would happen next. I didn't have anything to say to her. She called her mother on speakerphone to try to convince me to forgive her and stay married. But I told her mother everything that happened. She sounded so disappointed that she hung up immediately and apparently had no interest in talking to her daughter. Her daughter broke vows and refused to work with me for the betterment of our marriage. She lost her house due to me kicking out, lost her husband and lost parental support because of her actions. Instead of forming a relationship with another man on her phone, she should have started over with me. She could have just dropped her defenses and normal way of thinking, to be honest with me, no matter how much it might have hurt. Discussing what drove her apart from me might have made all the difference and saved her family. I did the best I could over those 16 years and honestly never expected her to stoop so low. I always made myself available to her and tried to keep her happy. But it wasn't enough if she just would have been patient and considerate. I know we could have repaired our relationship on vacation and over time. Don't ever blame yourself for someone else's actions and decisions. She chose to join a group online and secretly start talking to someone else about how she felt. She chose to invite that man over and sleep with him instead of reminding herself of why she fell in love with you and chose you in the first place. Maybe you guys would have started a new hobby together. Maybe you could have kept up the family by grind in the evenings. There are many ways to inspire a mentoring relationship. It won't always feel like how it started out because life is full of change, relationships and people change. Your wife had a responsibility to keep her head on straight and do whatever she needed to do to improve the life of her kids, husband and self. Instead, she chose a path of distrust and haste. It was like she covered up a fatal wound with a band-aid. The cause of the problem wasn't dealt with and now the beautiful marriage must end. You understand that this wasn't your fault, but also that a marriage takes two wise and willing participants by cheating. Your ex was no longer a willing participant in the marriage. Thank you for sharing your story. Now it's time to get into our second story for today. I was about to propose to my girlfriend. We met 3 years prior in the first pottery class of our freshman year. At the Institute of Art, sitting beside each other as we sculpted pots, we had real conversations that became something I looked forward to. As it turned out, both our parents tried to discourage us from going to college as art majors. They didn't see it as a career with stability. But I knew this was because they were from a different time. My father was taught to work hard in physical labor and my mother was taught to be a faithful housekeeping wife and mother. My girlfriend's parents were extremely similar. So we joked around about getting them together. I really did imagine her parents meeting mine and then us getting married. After our 3rd anniversary, I planned to propose before we graduated. I believe there was a reason we met at art school. Despite both our parents' discouragement, we were meant to be artists together in our 2nd year of college. My girlfriend and I put together a website to sell our creative pieces. We came up with a creative name that included our initials. This was an inspiring thing to do together to boost our confidence, portfolios and cooperation skills. I had no idea how short-lived her participation would be, with a proposal on my mind but not quite on my lips. I want to surprise my girlfriend with lunch one day. She had an internship at an art gallery on 3rd Street. As I walked down the wide corridor toward the back room, I noticed 2 people passionately kissing through partially open blinds. Upon closer inspection, I realized it was my girlfriend. She was in the office of Mr. Potts, the art gallery manager. Instantly my whole world crashed down. I felt like I had wasted prime years of my life chasing a pointless career with a heartless lying woman. Shocked and hurt. I threw open the door and yelled for them to stop. They were disheveled and shocked. AP must have been at least 15 years older than me. He looked extremely embarrassed and said, "I'm sorry, son." As soon as he realized this was my girlfriend, I yelled at her asking what she was doing, kissing this man. She was quiet, wiping her mouth when she tried to grab my arm and lead me away. There were several people, including gallery visitors and art critics, gathering outside the office, listening and watching. I refused to go quietly after I started piecing things together while she tried to pull me down the hall. I announced loudly that she was making out with him because he was the one responsible for promoting artists. She threw my arm down and asked why I was there. I held up the lunch bag and loudly said I was bringing her lunch when I caught her cheating on me. The crowd was shocked and started to give us space. Mr. Potts' blinds were fully shut. Now with the door locked, she whispered, saying she didn't cheat. She only slept with him to boost her career. So it didn't count as cheating. I was speechless. I was so surprised she was being serious. She didn't think sleeping with this man in exchange for personal gain was cheating. I asked her what she thought it was and she said nothing, thereby expecting me to forgive her and maintain our relationship. She said all she had to do was show him her breasts. Then he did the rest. I called her crazy and dumped her. My exact words were, "I won't marry someone like you." I immediately went to the receptionist. I demanded to see or speak with the man in charge of Mr. Potts. The head of the gallery, Mr. Esp, came downstairs to meet with me. The same crowd from earlier was standing with me as if to support and back up my claims. But I think they just enjoyed the unfolding drama. My girlfriend and the art gallery manager were dramatically fired in front of at least 13 people who cheered when Mr. Esp gave the word within 30 awkward minutes. My girlfriend lost her potential husband and internship. She cried in front of everyone and left. That was the last time I saw her, but I heard she failed to graduate the same year. I did, probably because she was too embarrassed to submit any art into the gallery and lost her inspiration. Her art and initials are no longer part of my website, which is still thriving to this day. Sometimes I wish I would have gotten the chance to talk to her about how meaningful sexual relations are. Our bodies are meant to be sacred, and who we sleep with is a pretty big indicator of where our life leads from. The sound of it. She didn't take anyone seriously. For someone to use sex to their advantage is extremely disrespectful, especially if they're in a committed relationship with someone else. Where's the humility and honor in that situation? Life is hard for everyone, and sometimes people do desperate things to ensure better opportunities for themselves. But they fail to see that when they take shortcuts, it only hurts them and the people they use or disregard. Mr. Potts lost his job and possibly his family at home because of one intern's unexpected temptation. She didn't love him, but his wife did, and you loved her. She didn't consider any of this and did an excellent job proving herself selfish, inconsiderate and manipulative. Keep your faith that you won't marry someone like her. There are women out there who have matured and learned what's most important in a committed, meaningful relationship. Consideration, compassion, communication, and faithfulness. Everybody has their own thought processes and struggles. But when you love someone, you accept those without judgment. It should be the individual's goal to grow and learn to diminish their bad habits and practice good ones. Therefore, improving the marriage altogether. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoy listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please